Well, Columbia University has a storied history of student protests going back to 1968. Um, I was present for a lot of actions at Columbia University back when I lived in New York. I saw sort of the gestation of the Palestine solidarity movement there. I really saw it as like a national leader, even at that time, like a decade ago, along with the University of Michigan. And now things have really come to a head. Columbia University's students enacted kind of Gaza encampment in the middle of campus in Morningside Heights in New York City, media center of the world. And the protests have spread all across the country, all the way to Cal Polytechnic on the West Coast. Campuses across the country are starting these kind of occupations or autonomous zones. And what they're doing is challenging the investment of major American universities in merchants of death like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, as well as other companies that are involved in the genocidal slaughter of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and in militarism in general. It relates directly to what we're going to discuss later about the $95 billion aid package that is basically a down payment on conflicts, not just in the Middle East and Eastern Europe, but in the Asia Pacific theater for a generation. And they're challenging the American university and the hypocrisy of the liberalism espoused by American university administrators, like Columbia president Manu Shafiq, a trustee of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and exposing the contradictions. And they've consequently provoked the inevitable Zionist freakout, comparing what's happening there to the second coming of the Holocaust. So, I mean, I don't know how much footage we really need to show from Columbia, Aaron, inside the campus, but we're seeing a lot of police repression. Jeremy Lafredo was out there, who's been doing so much reporting for us from Israel, Palestine. He was on the scene capturing, counterterrorism cops mobilizing. Right now, they're in negotiations with the students of the university administration over when the encampment will be broken up. It was supposed to happen last night. It didn't happen. These counterterror cops didn't go in. There were some rumors about the National Guard being, there are threats about the National Guard coming in, which would have been an absolute disaster for Biden. And so they're not coming. I really highly doubt that they're coming in. But now there's sort of this 48-hour window of negotiations to decide what's going to happen. At the University of Minnesota, the administration just brutally broke up the protest and banned all the students from campus for a year. But here it's kind of unclear what's going to happen. And there's a lot of political pressure in both directions. Aaron, what are your thoughts on what we're seeing at Columbia?
Well, it's just so heartening. I'm so inspired by all these brave young people putting their bodies on the line and being unintimidated. There have been such an attempt not only to intimidate them by force, but also all these smear efforts, calling them anti-Semitic. You have the entire political class uniting to basically compare what they're doing. Some people are comparing what they're doing to 1930s Germany. Tom Cotton did that. He said that basically these people are perpetrating a pogrom of Jewish people. But meanwhile, not only are the Columbia students unintimidated, but they're inspiring others and they're spreading. So, for example, I'm not fully up to date on all the encampments, but I believe this one at Harvard is a brand new one.
So they're setting it up. They're kind of just going.
And then you had NYU, where they've literally built an apartheid wall after arresting people en masse. To stop them, they've literally built an apartheid wall to prevent people from going back and putting up another encampment.
Yeah, I think they built it around the Stern School of Business, which is You know, I always thought that the Stern School of Business should be walled off from society along with Wharton, but I guess they're walling people off from going into it. And the Zionist freak out is kind of amusing, but of course, I mean, the fish rots from the head. Joe Biden has condemned the student protest as blatant anti-Semitism. Biden condemns blatant anti-Semitism at Columbia pro-Palestine protests. His remarks come after footage emerges appearing to show Jewish students being harassed and intimidated. Apparently, Joe Biden saw photographs of 40 Jewish students being beheaded by Hamas. That's kind of what happens here. And, you know, this was in a statement commemorating the Jewish holiday of Passover. And he said it was necessary to speak out against the alarming surge of anti-Semitism in our schools, communities, and online. So Biden kind of just set the stage for an official crackdown at Columbia. He couldn't say, you know, I understand why these students are outraged, because he's the source of the outrage. He's presiding over a genocide. As you mentioned, Tom Cotton called for the National Guard to come in. But it's not just Tom Cotton, or Marco Rubio, I believe, called for the National Guard. Yep. You know, these are senators who are key assets of the foreign Israel lobby, which is not registered as a foreign agent, unlike other lobbies. It wasn't just them who are calling for a military crackdown, a Kent State-style crackdown on the students at Columbia University, on the basis of some very shady videos and photographs, which we'll analyze in a minute. It was the state of Israel itself. State of Israel is directly meddling in U.S. politics, as it always has. No foreign entity meddles in U.S. politics more and gets away with it with more impunity than the apartheid state of Israel. And it promoted a call by Shai Davidai, who's the hysterical professor or associate professor at Columbia, who's had his key card pulled because he will not stop harassing students and faculty and administrators. He calls all of the students terrorists. He says terrorists have taken over Columbia University. The government needs to take over Columbia. This is an Israeli professor. This is important. Repost if you agree. I guess he's trying to he's like a content creator too. He's doing that like RT if you agree that you have to do if you're trying to make money off Elon's revenue sharing, ad sharing system. Now here's the Israeli Foreign Ministry. Official Israeli governing entity. Terrorism is an ideology. They are openly supporting terror. They are terrorists. So the state of Israel is promoting a call for the U.S. government to take over a U.S. university and calling the students terrorists. How is this not a scandal? I think the State Department should definitely have to answer for this. If I get time, I'll go to a briefing this week. But this is so much crazier than anything any Russian St. Petersburg troll farm was accused of doing. And this is where the momentum for a brutal government repression of American students is coming from. It's coming from Tel Aviv. It's coming from a country that is committing genocide 5,000 miles away.
I wanted to play Tom Cotton because he's not only calling for the National Guard to come in, he's also calling for any student who's on a foreign visa, any student protester on a foreign visa, to be deported. And it's worth listening to what he says.
I gather there were about 100 people arrested last night at NYU. It seems like there may need to be even more arrests today. These university presidents need to ask the mayor and the chief of police in New York to send in New York City's finest to arrest anyone who's breaking the law, who's squatting on private property when they've been told to disperse, who's harassing or intimidating Jewish students in a nascent pogrom, and demand that students actually do what they're supposed to do on campus, which is go to school. And by the way, any of these students who are foreigners here on visas should immediately have their visas revoked by the Biden administration and be promptly deported. They have no right to be here. They certainly have no right to be here spewing anti-Semitic and anti-Israel filth. I gather there were about 100 people arrested last night at NYU.
So anyway, I mean, he's at the fringe of the congressional spectrum, but there's really not that much difference anymore between him and his counterparts on the Democratic side. I'm sure some people on the Democratic side agree with him, and regardless, they're all playing into this narrative that demonizes people who protest a genocide. And there's right now basically complete impunity for the state to crack down on them. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing, I don't know about deportations, but increasingly authoritarian measures against student protesters, because, I mean, we're already seeing them banning TikTok because they're worried about not controlling a platform that allows for dissenting information.
Well, I mean, yeah, it all fits into the same box of the Israel lobby, which is a foreign lobby in the United States that's unregistered, that's so powerful that it's unregistered. And it's cutouts like Tom Cotton, de-democratizing the US. We see it in Germany, you see it in France, you see it in the UK, the de-democratization, systematic de-democratization of Western liberal democracies in order to protect the special relationship with Israel. The TikTok ban is about that. We'll cover that. What Manoush Shafik has done, who is an Egyptian-born president of Columbia. I think she might be the first Arab president of any Ivy League institution. What she has done is unprecedented in recent times, where the NYPD was brought onto campus to conduct mass arrests, and students were suspended for supposedly trespassing on their own campus, and they're not able to access their own dorms, which they've paid for. There's definitely going to be, or I would assume there will be, a lawsuit about that they're not allowed to live where they've paid rent and they're not allowed to live there because of their political activities. And then the question of whether they've participated in violence is never even addressed. They've not been given any due process. Whatever violence took place, which is obviously extremely exaggerated and was definitely the result of provocations by Zionist infiltrators, without a doubt, whatever that took place was outside of campus. So we're already witnessing unprecedented repression. And it's all part of the same scenario we've been witnessing for over a decade. You know, the passage of anti-BDS laws, which not only limit the speech of American citizens, but limit the free enterprise rights, like, you know, the things that I thought Republicans would agree with, of American companies to decide where they do business. It's all for Israel. It's all for this foreign country, which we're told is somehow a part of ours, even though what it's doing has nothing to do with American national security or political interests, if you want to look at it from a kind of realist point of view.